back with Tom and Edwin's Excellent Adventure. And our last episode, we were talking about coming up with an action plan, business plan, timeline, sort of some of the logistics. And one of the things was to think about what gets in the way, what might get in the way, and how to neutralize that, which brought up competition, the fact that other people have other options outside of the church.
Right. Well, at this point in history, about 80% of the people in America don't go to church on Sunday. And
wow.
I think most clergy bemoan the fact that that's a reality, and they long for the good old days when, Sunday was a day of rest or was a sacred day, and people just, it wasn't a day of commerce, it wasn't a day of recreation, etc., like it is nowadays. And I think that in the church world, we have to really give good thought to our competition. Now, if you start a church...
So instead of bemoaning the reality, it's sort of adapting to it, and responding to the
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And we're not going to change the American culture to suddenly go back to the 1950s, when the only thing that was open in our town, little town in the suburbs of Chicago, was the gas station was open for a while, and the local Rexall drugstore, and maybe the Jewel food store was open for a little while. Everything else was closed. People weren't doing business. There was only limited kids' sports leagues in the afternoon, et cetera, et cetera. And I think clergy need to think that competition isn't just other churches. In fact, our competition is far more other kinds of things. So, for example, if you started a church and you met at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning in Wilmington, what would be your competition beyond other churches?
People having brunch together, people going to the park together, people sleeping in, visiting other friends, sports leagues, youth sports leagues, ton of soccer games on Sunday, et cetera, et cetera.
Travel, going to work. More people than ever work on Sundays. So many businesses are open. As Harry Beckwith wrote in this legendary book that I encourage you to read called Selling the Invisible, we need to think about competition with a very, very wide lens. Now, just because something else exists on Sunday morning and it's competition for you doesn't mean it's necessarily a problem. I think you have to take a few minutes and understand your competition and ask, well, how much power does it really have? Is it something that's that's impacting you? You need to see if it's wise for you to go head-to-head with the competition, or if it's wiser for you to bypass the competition and simply choose another time or another place or another way of doing things. You're in the enviable position of starting something basically in the year 2015, and you're in a place where you can start anything you want for whenever you want that makes sense. Other places, their cultures are set in stone, and you'll hear, well, we've worshipped this time and this place in this way for the last 65 years. We're not going to change now. And so they've got a real challenge. You, in analyzing the competition and what's going on in people's lives in the year 2015, have a completely different opportunity. So it really behooves you to think about the competition, how powerful it is. The last thing I encourage you to think about, and this is a little more outside the box, excuse me, is rather than just say, well, there are competition and we can't do anything about them. Once in a while, I think the smartest thing you can do is join them. Okay? Now, that might mean, for example, what if there was a sports league and they all met on Sunday morning and you lost a significant number of people and you noticed that there were tons of families, worshiping, or not worshiping, but, worshiping sports, being together on Sunday morning in the local park or at the local stadium or wherever. Maybe rather than trying to beat them maybe there's a way you join them.
So it's really it's analyzing the community needs and thinking how you can meet those needs better than others are currently meeting them, or perhaps in a sense creating another space that doesn't go head to head with some of that competition and just creates another need, perhaps.
Exactly. I think it's all about research and understanding, and a lot of people, one of the smartest ways to do it is to put a map up on the wall and say, here's my competition, and maybe there's 5 or 10 different things, and then you look at how serious each one of those bits of competition or pieces of competition are, and then you say to yourself, all right, in light of this being the reality and the likely reality for some years to come, where are my opportunities? Is my opportunity best to go to a different time? And then you have to ask yourself, where's the competition there? Is my opportunity to go head to head at the same time? And it may very well be that changes. When we started the community church, I was scared to death of the competition of all the other churches that were in our community, and so I chose a different time. Then after we established the congregation, after 3 years, we decided, the heck with it, let's go head to head, and let's choose that right time. And we started out meeting at 11 o'clock, but we realized our competition with kids' sports was so great that we brought it back a half an hour. So that meant that kids could come to worship with their families from 10:30 to 11:30 and still make their home games, for soccer and things like that, and lacrosse, which met at 12. So,
and again, instead of bemoaning the fact that you had this competition from youth sports leagues, you adapted to it and met the community's needs.
Yeah, there's so much time and energy wasted on what are cultural realities that, we're not going to change. So rather than worry about that, in light of this situation, what can I do? Yeah. And even if you can't neutralize it, like we talked about in action plans, how do you live your life? How do you set up your worshiping community in light of that?
Yeah.
The last thing I'd say is, I think there are a lot of ministers who say, you know what, these youth sports or travel or vacation homes or work or shopping or sleeping in, etc., they're frustrated with that, and they long for the good old days. Well, I long for the good old days too, but you know what? I don't think they're going to come back in my lifetime. And I think the best thing, the smartest thing I can do is put together a worship experience so that people will make the choice to choose us over recreating or working in that hour or sleeping in that hour, etc., and to make every single worship service as dynamic as possible so that people will choose us as opposed to something else. And to me, that makes the most sense.
And it brings something of value. It's something meaningful. And again, it sounds like it requires some bit of humility in letting go of bemoaning and sort of complaining about the reality and adapting to meet the community's needs. So it sounds like a theology of community, Tom.
Yeah, well, you could say that. I also think that sometimes the church has gotten lazy in the past and said, well, it's Sunday morning, they're supposed to be doing this. Well, maybe we haven't put a good enough service out there that inspires or causes people to choose us. As Beckwith says, the very best marketing you could ever do is to have or provide an awesome service for your customers or your clients, or in our case, parishioners or congregants. Do a great job. That's the best marketing that you'll ever do.
Because then they'll share that with friends, and that's
and then hopefully that becomes the kind of marketing that you want, which is word of mouth marketing, which is cost effective, and people tend to believe their friends and what their friends say about something than the advertisement or the billboard or the website that somebody creates on their own behalf.
Well, I think that's a great point to end on, Tom. And I know in one of our episodes, we'll get to talking about marketing and all that jazz. Sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Till next time. Next episode.